All right, I think we'll get going. Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending our presentation today. But before we get going, we're going to have a little bit of information about a really nice benefit that the Colorado Society of CPAs has provided for us. I'd like to introduce you to Dana Shibley, who's going to talk about our Verifier Pro free membership item that we have, and he'll talk more about the specifics for a couple minutes, and then we'll get started on the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. As COCPA members, all of you now get access to Verifier Pro at no charge to you or anyone at all with whom you would like to share information or get signatures from. Verifier is ultra secure messaging and document sharing and storage, where any information you put in is protected by our patented encryption key management technology, CelluCrypt, which manages the interaction of 6 different encryption keys for each time that any individual accesses any single piece of information. As you're in, you'll sense situational awareness at a very high level because of the intelligent organization of information inside of Verifier, and also a full access record of exactly who has looked at what information and when, and also may have downloaded that information. You can see that for every single instance of access inside of Verifier. It's extremely easy to use. Our company is led by Jack Smith, who invented and co-founded the company Hotmail, which was used by about 500 million individuals. He also had leading roles with two successful digital security companies. So we know very well how to balance the issues associated with ease of use and also security. That's extremely difficult to do. Verifier is now in use by members of a number of different societies and associations in your industry across North America. I also want to emphasize that you get unlimited digital signatures capability with Verifier, which will save you a lot of money. And you can watch a live online demo of Verifier. There will be several starting in late October. Or you can simply go to youtube.com and type in Verifier accounting demo to watch a full demo, or Verifier getting started to watch an abbreviated one. If you want to dive right in, go to verifier.com/COCPA and type in your COCPA recognized email address to begin. Jim, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate that. I use Verifier as well, and it's a very nice product. I'd encourage you to look at that. Well, welcome to everybody to our presentation, Data Analytics, Practical Guide for Concept to Implementation. We're going to try to get away from the theoretical that you mostly see all the time and give you some real world practical information. My two co-presenters today, each are Sri Panapali and Martin Fasang. Once again, I'm Jim Gilbert. I'm on the board of directors at the Colorado Society of CPAs. Also, I'm a member of the technology committee, which I'm really proud of as well. Now I'd like to introduce you to Sri Panapali.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sri Panapali, principal at Createch Information Systems. I've been a technologist for many years, and today I'm playing the role of CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, who is the executive responsible for the overall technological landscape of an organization. With that, I'll pass to Martin, who is the CDO.
Thank you, Mr. CTO. So my name is Martin Fasang. I'm the founder of DriveAct LLC, and I'll be your Chief Data Officer today. Many companies are investing into this new position as they realize the value of the data and try to get that value out of it. So, Jim, what are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about data analytics. Show me the data, right? I'm the CFO. I want you guys to give my organization some data. So, yeah, thank you. I think you guys will enjoy this. I mean, these two guys are technical experts, and I appreciate them helping us to understand more about data analytics.
So it's not show me the money anymore, it's show me the data.
Well, it's both. Show me the data, then I make money, right, Sri? All right, the agenda, upper left here, data analytics. We're going to talk about the value proposition of data analytics. One of the important parts is we're going to talk about pillars for successful implementation. And we're going to have a demo today. These guys are going to show some demos about real world application, how this gets applied. And then we're going to talk about data results, the path from descriptive to prescriptive. We've already had our introductions. We're going to give a couple checklists that we're going to give to you in your presentation today. We're going to talk about takeaways and having a Q&A. During our Q&A today, please put your questions in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring those, and we'll try to get those answered at the back end of this presentation. And if we don't get to every question you've got, we're going to answer by email. I'll have these guys answer your questions. So I look forward to presenting this and moving to the next slide. Now, Sri's going to talk to us about data and analytics and give us a little bit of introduction. Why are we looking at data analytics?
Thank you, Jim. So let's start with the fundamentals, right? What is data and analytics, and why do you care? It is the process of turning raw data into intelligence for informed data-driven decision making. Now, what does that mean? Data exists in all of your applications as raw data, right? Which is represented here on the left side as a database symbol. It could be CSV files. It could be structured or unstructured. It could even be websites or images, right? Data could be in all different shapes and forms. Now, if you show that to any executive or even any individual professional, it doesn't make sense. You can't make patterns out of it, right? So this middle icon here is for intelligence. So this process, the main part of this process is to convert this raw looking data into meaningful intelligence, which is intuitive. You look at it, you make sense out of it, right? And we're going to show you several of these in our demonstration today. So that is the next step, is to bring up create these colorful charts, visualizations that will intuitively get you to understand what's going on rather than looking at boring raw data. And then the last part here is, once you have the intelligence, then in the right hands with the executives, then they are able to make the decisions. Where are we doing good? Where are we lagging behind? Right? So that will help them to make the right decisions, right? Informed, educated decisions. Over to you, Martin, for the value proposition.
Thank you, Sri. So now that we know what the data analytics is about, let's talk about why we might want to look at the data analytics program and implement it. Well, there are multiple research companies that looked into a return on data analytics programs. One of them is a Nucleus Research, which we provided a link down there at the bottom of the presentation. What they found out that every dollar invested in data analytics returns about $13 of return. And so that's pretty impressive. You might have heard that metric before. So how does data analytics accomplish that? Well, the companies that implement and adopt data analytics are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6 times more likely to retain those customers, 19 times as likely to be profitable. Another research found that the data analytic companies with data analytic programs have 69% better strategic decisions, 54% improved control of operations, 52% better understanding of customers, which again leads to better retention, and 47% better are better at reducing their costs.
Well,
so
that's
now that
great
we
numbers,
know,
Martin.
yes, sir.
$13 for every dollar invested. I wish my portfolio looked like that. I can plan my retirement.
Well, you just need to invest in data analytics. So now that we know what the data analytics is about and why we're doing it, Jim, could you please talk to us about the key pillars? You're on mute, sir.
Jim?
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. I had to put myself on mute. The 6 pillars that we want to present to you today are very important for you to bring back to your organization. So most of our content today, you can bring back to your organization for discussion and review as to your liking. First one, left side, leadership buy-in. We want to talk about senior leadership buy-in. You know, this is the first step that we want to have. Senior leadership and leadership overall needs to buy into this data analytics program. You know, my favorite part of the discovery of this is the data sources. Where are our data sources, our apps identified for visualization and business intelligence? This impacts your company culture. What are the elements of effective data analytics culture? You know, this is going to be an important thing to understand and review as you're going through your project plan. Data readiness, you know, data integration for a unified source. We want to make sure our data has quality and integrity. What is our visualization strategy? You know, what's the levels and the details for the right audience? So in other words, we're trying to get the right analytics and BI tools for the right person based on where they are in the company and the organization. And then tool selection. Sri's going to talk about this. I don't know if I've ever seen a presentation like this. We're going to talk about tool selection for data and readiness and visualization. And that's going to be an important part of your journey as you start to prepare your plan for data analytics. Now, Martin, will you please talk to us about a little more detail about leadership buy-in, if you would, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the first pillar, important aspect of data analytics program is to obtain that leadership buy-in. And how do we go about that? We might want to showcase the early adopter success, look at other companies that have successfully adopted data analytics and see what kind of benefits they are getting. We might want to have a high-level plan. Are we going to buy the solution, meaning are we going to hire consultants and build that solution for us, or are we going to build it internally? Engaging cross-functional teams and other people in the organization usually helps with the leadership buy-in as well. I'm sure our senior leaders will want to know what's the timeline for that project and how much is it going to cost us? And then how do we know that we actually reach the goal? How do we measure the success? So these are just some of the points, considerations you might want to think about as you are obtaining your leadership approval. Now I'm going to hand it over to Sri, who will talk to us about the data sources.
Thank you. Knowing your data sources, right? Once you get the leadership buy-in, this is the very next thing that you want to start familiarizing yourself with, regardless of the role, whether you are in the executive team or in the analysis team or the implementation, you need to know your data sources. And typically in a small to medium-sized businesses today, there's lots of data sources, right? Coming from different applications. If you are mentioned here, your AR and AP, CRM for your customer data, point of sale portals, expense management for your employees and contractors, human resources, and the list goes on and on. What is represented here at the top, you might have a central system like an ERP, like SAP or Oracle NetSuite or something of that nature, which has workflows and integrations with these other different applications. And the second part of this, which often people ignore, I've seen in my experience, is that also to identify not just the data sources, but also the sources of truth, systems of truth for your data, right? In my recent experience, there's a point of sales portal where when we got the customer information from there that actually made the order, then the address in there didn't match the CRM. So if you encounter situations like that, which one wins? You should have the strategy ready for what are your systems of truth before you can jump in and get into the data and analytics.
So, Mr. CTO, I have a question for you there.
Sure.
All of this data sources that you've listed here, those are our internal data. So we have those in our company. How about the external data sources? Should I be considering those too?
Very important. Thank you for asking, Martin. So most of the times you might want to start with the internal data sources, but external data sources are very important as well, especially if you're engaged in some B2B or vendor related activities. External data sources provide a lot of important information. So you want to start with the most important ones, regardless of internal or external, and then expand it out from there. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Over to you for the company culture.
Thank you. So company culture is very important, and I'll actually start with that takeaway at the bottom. Why it's important. Only 8% of companies actually achieve analytics at scale, according to McKinsey survey. And to a large extent, this lack of success to scale analytics is because of the company culture and sometimes establishing the pillars of that culture being very challenging. So let's just go through that very quickly here. We need a trust. So people in the company, management needs to trust the data, and we need to trust, obviously, amongst our members of the management and the company. We need commitment to the data. So that commitment usually comes with the realization that data is one of our key strategic assets in a company. We need talent. So we need people who are able to read the data and turn it into actionable insight. Sharing is also very important. So within the organization, we have different groups that share the best practices. We also share with the user groups outside of the company. And then finally, the mindset. So when it comes to a decision, we usually default to intuition, but are we willing to look at the data and really consider what is the data telling us? And are we willing to change that decision that would be based on intuition to something different if data says otherwise? And that's a very important component of the data culture. And so back to you, Sri. Can you talk to us about the data readiness, please?
Thanks, Martin. Many companies, when they start getting into this data and analytics, might ignore this step, especially the smaller ones. But this is a very important step where it makes all the data ready, unifies, consolidates, and makes the data ready for the visualization tool. Whatever BI tool that you choose, it's not ideal for this tool to go connect to dozens of different data points and worry about all those connections and all that. All the data should be ready for the BI tool to pick up and give you the analytics. Some of the considerations here, the connectors and APIs. How do you connect to these different data sources? In this day and age, more and more applications are exposing the data through APIs, not as a direct connection to their database. So you need to know that. So if you're integrating these different sources, which of them offer which APIs? So as part of your analysis phase, you got to analyze this and be ready to connect to those, or even direct data points. Some of them might still continue to provide direct data connections. You need to know that. Next is a very important step, data integration. You have all these dozens of data sources that all need to be represented in the visualization, but they all need to be unified, integrated. So you need to come up with a visualization or integration strategy in this case to consolidate this data and unify them for the visualization. Cleansing and governance, either before or after the integration, you need to worry about this. Keep in mind one thing, that all these visualizations and charts and graphs, as beautiful as they are, they're only as good as the quality and the cleanliness of the data underneath it, right? So the data needs to be clean. We'll see more details about this, and also deduplication. All of this is part of cleansing and governance. You need to define the roles and set who's going to do what. Last but very important, security and protection, who gets access to this data, and also is the data encrypted at rest, right? If it has sensitive information, we have an obligation to encrypt the data, but still provide good access to these tools. So all of these together will ensure our data readiness for visualization. That back to you, Mr. CDO, about visualization strategy.
Thank you, Mr. CTO. So let's just quickly recap what we've learned so far. So we know we need the leadership buy-in to start a data analytics project. We have to know our data sources. We have to have key pillars of the company culture. We have to have our data ready. So what's next? We have to know who we are going to address analytics to, right? And it could be various levels in the organization. Could be a C-suite, could be a middle management, and could be the analyst. And why is this important? So depending on who that analytics is going to be targeted to, we might have to adjust our time horizon in the analytics, and we might have to adjust our level of detail. So the C-suite is going to be interested in the longer term. Okay, high level key performance indicators, probably not, you're not going to go down to a lower level transactional level of detail in your dashboards. Whereas if you are building your dashboard for analyst level, you're going to be looking at current month, maybe month over month comparison, year over year comparison, and the level of detail in that dashboard, the drill down will be very high. So you'll be looking all the way down to a transactional level of detail. And next, Jim will kick off our demonstration.
All right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, guys. So now we're going to get to kind of what I would call the core section of this presentation today. We're going to talk about data and analytics and kind of a live demonstration of kind of the before and after. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on an introduction of what the before looks like, what we typically look at in organizations, and what the after effects look like. Sri's going to spend some time on data integration, which he's got a really nice chart on that as well to bring back to our organization. And then Martin's going to follow up with some visual analytics, and he's going to guide us through that, and it's going to be great for everybody. So with that, typically we have in a lot of organizations, my organization included, we've got all kinds of data points. We've got Excel sheets, CSV sheets, all kinds of different things coming from different directions. I have a client that's got 27 different data sources, and they've got, I guarantee they have thousands of Excel sheets. And so what we're trying to go from is the typical Excel environment where most people kind of mine their data and sort and pivot and use slicer and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to move over to the visual analytics, the data analytics look. And our guys are going to talk about, kind of the summary level all the way down to what you can do in terms of a drill down to the detail. And we're going to guide you through that. So with that, Sri, can you talk to us about data integration, what that looks like?
Would love to, Jim. Thank you. So what is the preparatory work, right? We have put together a demonstration for you all today. We thought you would like it better than just tell. We would rather do a show and tell, right? So we have put together the data in the form of a database. If you see my screen, this is a database representing a data warehouse created on Amazon AWS as an RDS database. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit between this slide and that. Sorry if this is not full screen during this process. So let's say your data has multiple dimensions, right? Now we'll look at what it takes to kind of put it together and how to put it together. So let's say the orders, the real world sample that we took this is called customer sales. I would like to say this is not a real data, but real like data that we took for this demonstration only. It's customer sales, right? Somebody goes onto your POS portal and orders a product. How do we represent that, right? So let's say the first dimension is orders. So you have your order ID, order date, ship date, and that kind of information, right? Let's say it is, in this example, let's say it is coming through an API. Your order management system is what you start your research with and identify the APIs where we get this kind of information from, the order information. And what kind of protocols they're using. Is it REST or SOAP or what kind of data exchange formats? Is it coming through as JSON or XML? You go through that and you pull that order information. And in the center, what you're seeing here is a business data warehouse. Oftentimes, and we strongly recommend this, when you're unifying data, when you're integrating data, your integration point should be a business data warehouse. That's the purpose of business data warehouse. On the bottom left side here, you see a customer info. So let's say the other dimension is you have your customer location, customer preferences, and all of that information in this real database, which we're going to show you the analytics for, the visualizations. So all of your customer information is also brought in. Let's say it comes from a NoSQL database. That's how they expose it. They give you like a Mongo or some kind of NoSQL database on the cloud or on premise, and you got to extract the data from that. So this arrow here shows some kind of script that you put in place to extract that information for customer. And then the third one is product sales. Let's say the product and sales information on the right side here, including the customer region and address and the sales information, like what kind of discount you are giving, what is the sales quantity, and what is the profit. So let's say these are all coming from CSVs, and maybe you have an ETL tool that is represented by this arrow here. There are different ways to do this integration. And the important point is though that you need to come up with an integration strategy, whether you're doing this all together as part of one agent, one tool, or use multiple tools. Either way you can do that. But what you see here, the green box here is the business intelligence tool, which Martin is going to talk about Tableau here in a second. So once you have your integration done, and cleansing too, cleansing and aggregation, this central blue box represents the cleansed, integrated, unified data that your business intelligence tool now has to look at only one area, one data repository, and create the wonderful charts and visualizations. So with that, Martin, I would stop sharing here, and I would ask you to go ahead and start sharing.
Thank you, Sri. Before you stop sharing, Sri, I do have a quick question for you. So in our organization, we have a lot of Excel spreadsheets and CSV files where we have data. And I heard that data visualization packages can just connect to those directly, right? I can just connect my Tableau or Power BI to my Excel spreadsheet or CSV. So why should I go through the headache of setting up this business warehouse? What's the benefit?
Very interesting question. Thanks, Martin. Yes, Technically, you can, absolutely can. You can directly connect this business intelligence tool to multiple data sources. If you really have a very narrow business case, like one or two spreadsheets is all you want to integrate, then you can absolutely do that. But as it grows into bigger landscape, like what we've showcased here, and even bigger, you have dozens and dozens of data sources. You want to have a repeatable, automated process, right? That's very important, that integrates all of this data and present to the BI tool so that you have two clear separation of concerns. One is the preparation of data, and now you have only one repository to look at, and then the visualization is a separate concern. Hopefully that answers your question.
That makes complete sense to me, Sri. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me now share my screen here.
Sure, yeah.
And what I'm going to do next is show you what we can do with the data that Sri prepared in his database. Okay, so we're looking at different software now. This is a visualization package. I'm just using Tableau here for to demonstrate how the whole process works. But we're actually connected to that database that Sri showed us there. And at this point, it still looks very much like Excel spreadsheet, right? We're not getting too much insight out of this. It's still very tabular. But what these visualization packages allow us to do is actually build pretty effective dashboards. And so, let me see if I can hide this here. So anyway, what we can set up is the visualizations that will quickly show us what's important, okay? So this is a development environment where I, again, have, I'm building various sheets and dashboards from dimensions and measures in that database. And without even giving you much of an introduction, you can very quickly see what's important to my company, right? So you can see that I'm focused on total sales, total profit, number of orders, and average days to ship. You can also see that my three main product or business lines include technology, which is here depicted with this legend, technology, furniture, and office supplies. And you can also see that my sales are split about 1/3 each of those. And you can very quickly also see that my profit, however, is not quite coming from all of those three businesses the same way. So furniture is actually delivering the least amount of profit. Technology is delivering more than half of the profit. And look at these insights. You can't get these by looking at Excel spreadsheets. You have to, if you're working with Excel spreadsheets, you have to download that data and massage it before you can get into these type of insights. And furthermore, you can also look at, analyze your sales, profit, orders, and average days to ship by subcategory. So, and I haven't even clicked anywhere yet, right? These data visualization packages are so powerful because of the drill down capability. So let's just look at our most profitable category, technology, to see where we might want to put more resources. We can see that phones, machine, and accessories are our top sellers in that category. Copiers come in number 4. However, our profit actually comes primarily from copiers. So right there, there's a very interesting insight where I might want to call my product management and try to push a sales of my, or sales organization, try to push the sales of my copiers. So that's to show you the power of visual analytics. There are many different charts. And by the way, I actually provided this link. You can find these charts as well as many other visualizations on public.tableau.com. That's one of the sources for inspiration as you're building your dashboards. Here's another view that provides the key performance indicators at the top and has some year-over-year performance comparison. There's a highlighting feature that's pretty powerful. This is my favorite chart where you look at the sales versus profit by customer. Again, very quickly, you can identify this is your profit, these are your sales. The customers on the right-hand side are those that are profitable. The customers on the left, not so much. So if you hover over these little dots, you can see here that Tamara Chand is my most profitable customer. You might want to take her for lunch. And here, Sean Miller great customer too. We're selling a lot to Sean, but not very profitable. So I might want to look at Sean and see if we could push some more profitable products to Sean. So right there, there's your insight that drives action and drives better business results. Here's another chart, interesting chart that shows the sales by day, by month. So you can see where you have heavy hitters, and also by segment and by region, you can see where you have spikes in sales and analyze those further to drive better insights. So now that we saw this end-to-end demo, Jim is going to talk to us about where we can take it further.
Yeah.
Before you go there, Jim, Martin, though, I have a question there. All these charts and visualizations look wonderful, very intuitive. How do we get these in the hands of the decision makers? Is there a specified prescribed process for that? Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, no, thank you, Sri. So that environment that I was showing there, that's a development environment. If you download the license, that's just going to be available to you. So yeah, great question. How do you get this to the hands of the users? And each visualization package usually comes with their own distribution model. So there are pretty much two ways how you can get the reports out to the hands of the decision makers. There's a push method where you can set up automated emails. So the dashboards will refresh on a nightly or weekly or monthly basis. And then the email will actually send a screenshot to the user. And the end user can look at that screenshot, be done with it, or if they want to drill down further, they click on the screenshot and that will take them into an interactive dashboard. Or what's actually preferred and more mature data analytics companies adopt is the self-service portal, where you can go and pull up that from a portal, from your website, from your intranet. You can pull up a link to a dashboard and on demand, when you need to know the answers, pull up that dashboard and do the analysis yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. So in summary, before we hand it over to Jim, thanks for pulling up this next chart. In summary, what the data visualization gives you that you don't get from Excel is that focus on what matters most. You can quickly identify the business drivers. And this is a very powerful feature, answer questions on the fly. Imagine you are in a meeting with your management and questions come up, right? And many times they are not anticipated. Right now, you probably are writing down notes and saying, I will follow up with you. Well, if you have visual analytics, if you have this dashboard in front of you, you can answer those questions right away. Very powerful. So Jim, hand it over back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Good job, guys. I appreciate you walking us through that. I really was impressed with the business data warehouse and bringing all those different pieces of information in and then consolidating and getting all that information out to everybody. So that's great. So next, we're talking about data results. How do we want our data to be? So this is the next step in our presentation. You look at the bottom there, hindsight to foresight. That's what we're trying to get to. So this is a typical eye chart that lots of people use, but it's going from on the left side, the first purple bubble there, descriptive to prescriptive. And, descriptive data is just basically reporting past performance. A lot of people think that data analytics just shows the past performance. It kind of just says, here's your information. So that's step one. Part of the byproduct of this whole routine is to get to the kind of a diagnostic look, where we're going to identify business drivers. We're looking at our data, looking at different pieces there. What are the drivers for all these data points that Martin covered with us? And then next is predictive analytics. So we're trying to get some projections. So trying to use our data and the historical data over time to create some projections. Where am I going to be on my project? Where am I going to be in my construction job? Where am I going to be in for my sales goals? That kind of stuff. So that's the next step. And then a very mature environment is what we call prescriptive, where you with a little bit of work you can get to the point where here's what the tool proposes as an action item, flat out. Here's what you should do, and as opposed to trying to mine through this stuff yourself. So going from left to right, going from historical to that optimum action item proposal is really great in a very mature environment. So With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sri to talk about data quality.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Yeah, quality of the data is, is just really, really important. All these wonderful charts and dashboards that we looked at, keep in mind they're only as good as the quality of the underlying data, right? I repeat that. So what is data that's with high quality, right? What are the different attributes, characteristics that make data of good quality? Here are some. Reliability of the data, relevancy, the data has to be very relevant, unique. Lots of times during integration process or even otherwise, you'll end up with duplicates of data. So it's very important to have it as unique as possible. Integrity of data, extremely important. I think all of you know that it is data without integrity is not going to do any good, even if you are able to provide the best charts and visualizations in the world. Clean data, we covered that. Our data always needs to be clean. Completeness of data, this is extremely important too. Just imagine in the demonstration that we showed you, we have the customer, the product, and the sales and the order information, right? What if we had just the order information and not the customer information? That would do us no good. We don't know who bought, who made that purchase to buy the product. Accuracy of data, obviously very important. Accessibility, not everybody should have access, especially if it has some sensitive information. You need to control the access to the data. In security world, it is known as the principle of least privilege. Timeliness of data, real-time data. The charts that we looked at, the visualizations that Martin showed us, a lot of times they're looked at real time. That's a real power in this. What is happening? Are there sales happening in the last hour? You can take a look at that in the visualizations supported by the timely data. And security is very important, the encryption of sensitive information. So with that, over to you, Martin, for implementation and go live.
Okay, thank you, Sri. So we've given you quite a few components of a successful data analytics program. We gave you a demo of how you can get from Excel-based or your data all the way down to the dashboard. So let's talk about a little bit about what makes an implementation go live successful for a project. So first of all, we recommend that you have a strong business case for your project. Look at the business issue that your company is facing. Is it a specific supply chain issue? Is it a lack of overall visibility into overall health of the business? And address that issue with your data analytics. We recommend that you go after quick hits. Data analytics projects could get really broad in scope and could last years to implement. Don't start with those. Start with something where you can get the quick hit, quick win, and show that to your management, show the success. Start with automation. So Jim talked to us about how we can get from descriptive to prescriptive, which is great. It's great to have that prescriptive vision in mind. But data analytics projects are usually successful when they first automate Excel processes, manual processes. If you can shave off hours or maybe even days from your monthly routine with this type of automation that we've shown you. Management championship is very important. And I want to stress the word championship. It's not just the management commitment. It's not just management saying, yeah, we commit to this, we like data analytics, let's go for it. It's them actually demonstrating that they use the tools to make the decision. So imagine your senior leaders going over the monthly results, not in a PowerPoint presentation, but actually using a visualization tool, dashboard, to look at the business performance and drill down into drivers. How powerful that would be to your successful implementation go live. Have the roles and responsibilities well defined. It's most likely going to take more than just one person, one department to roll out this project. You'll most likely need the IT. That's why you see here we have a CTO, we have CFO. You'll need a championship from multiple departments. And finally, we recommend that you go towards, maybe not start with, but move towards the self-service where people can actually go out there and pull up those dashboards on demand. There's not just a push implementation, but it's a self-service where we really embrace the user ownership of the data analytics tool that we're implementing. And I'm going to hand it over next to Jim, who is going to talk to us about the planning checklist.
Thank you, Martin. So this is one of two checklists that we provided for you. First one is a planning checklist. We've already talked about leadership buy-in, what the commitment looks like from senior leadership. We talked about data culture. Martin talked about that. Build versus buy. That's an analysis you need to do. Do you have the internal resources? Should you look at outside resources? Do I need somebody like Sri and Martin to help me out with this, or can I do it internally? The data visualization strategy. What's the agreement on that? That's really important. What's the output look like? What do people want to get when they get their data analytics tools? And then the business design. We want our business users and stakeholders to be involved in the design and really get what they're looking for as the end game. And again, roles and responsibilities, having defined roles and responsibilities. So this is checklist one that you can take back to your organization to really start your project plan for this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sri to talk about an implementation checklist.
Thank you. To add to the planning checklist that Mr. CFO has outlined, when you get to implementation, right, it could be a full-blown, it could be a prototype. More often than not, it's a prototype. But either way, there are certain considerations. There are some questions that need to be answered when you get to the implementation, regardless of the size. Data sets and sources of truth identified. At least you want to start with a smaller data set, but still you got to identify the data sources that you're trying to visualize, right? And identify the sources of truth. Integration and warehouse tool selection. So on the backend side, when you're getting the data ready, what are the integration technologies that you use? And a lot of them are available. Let me tell you, today it could even be confusing. There are lots of them available on the cloud, on-premise, open source, commercial, all types of tools and technologies available for warehouse and integration. You want to be cautious. There's no one size fits all here. It all goes case by case. So depending on your context, you want to make the smart tool selection. API connectivity and hosting. You want to verify this. What tools do you need for that? Right? And what kind of connectivity do they offer? As mentioned earlier, what kind of data exchange formats, what kind of protocols do they support, these API support? And all of those are definitely an important consideration. Data visualization solution selecting, right? So it's, am I using Tableau or Power BI? What tool am I using for visualization, right? So that is, the end game, right? So definitely you need to decide that. Visualization and distribution models. So the distribution models, as Martin talked earlier, there are push and pull models, right? Each with its own, business case, each with its own value added. Your executives might want to first start with the push model. I want to get an email in my inbox at the beginning of every day. I want to click around and do it. But ultimately, for a really, really mature model, you need to go to the pull model where, everybody, including executives, they log in into this portal and they pull on-demand reports. You don't necessarily have to stick to what is sent to you. You have now the power of logging in and generating reports on demand based on your own criteria. No impact to OLTP systems, very, very oftentimes ignored. Your OLTP systems versus OLAP, that's what they're referred to by in the technical world. This stands for online transaction processing. For example, your point of sale system, where your sales are coming in, that's your bread and butter. They should never be impacted by the analysis part of it, which is OLAP, which is what we are doing, data and analytics. This should never impact your bread and butter. So you need to have like a thick separation between the two, so that when we're building the analytics, it's not impacting your bread and butter. So these are some of the important considerations when you go to implementation. With that, let's touch on the tool selection. I hand it over to myself. We'll touch on some tools that you can use. As I said, tools are all over the place, on cloud, on premise, open source, commercial. Typically, you might want to consider open source before you go to commercial. In this day and age, the big difference is only the support that is provided. But in terms of the actual capability, open source tools can provide lots of capabilities, both on the backend side as well as, I suppose, on the visualization side as well. Data integration tools, ETL is what this is known as. Pentaho, Apache NiFi, Zapier, Informatica, these are some of the more popular tools. And some of these are even click, drag and drop. You don't even have to write a single line of code for some of these. If your landscape, if your data sources are simple enough. Streaming process, if you want to get real-time data up to the second, crunching millions of records potentially. These are some of the major ones: Apache Spark, Amazon Kinesis, Azure Analytics. REST and SOAP are the protocols or the standards that are used. When you're accessing APIs to fetch data, which protocol do they follow, right? You need to follow that. And there are a couple of good tools that I've used. In my experience, Postman and SOAP UI that you can use for this purpose. JSON and XML. This is the data exchange formats. Data exchange can be in any format as long as the sender and receiver understand that format. But these are the two most popular ones. In fact, JSON is very fast. By now, I think it's the most popular data exchange format. It's very lightweight and I like it. You can use any text editor on your laptops to look at those. Event hubs. This is also known as publish subscribe, pub sub model, where somebody publishes data, somebody later comes in and picks up the data. There are a couple of tools provided here, Kafka and Azure Event Hub. Warehouse, if you remember the central part of that slide, where all this data gets integrated into. Very important decision here to see which tool that you're going to use. Snowflake, Data Lake, Amazon Redshift, Teradata, some of the more popular implementations. Last, I would like to mention that you want to minimize the programming in this day and age. Shouldn't write hundreds of thousands of lines of code for this, but sometimes you will have to write some code. And if you land up doing that, these are some of the popular programming languages for data integration and readiness. So with that, Martin, can you talk to us a little bit about what are the tools and technologies look like in the visualization area?
Yes, Mr. CTO, that was a lot of technical lingo. You're clearly very passionate in that area.
Thank you.
Let's talk about building dashboards. This is probably not going to be as technical. So on the left-hand side, there are some tools for your consideration. So this quadrant comes from Gartner, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Gartner, in their latest study of visual BI tools, considers Microsoft, Tableau, and Qlik to be the leaders. So that's why we pointed those out on the right-hand side there. They're each very different. And it's important to consider your compatibility with existing IT landscape. So if you're on Office 365, for example, you might find integration with Power BI very easy, obviously, right? Power BI integrates very easily with the Microsoft suite. If you're looking for some business warehouse functionality built into your visual analytics, Qlik is a pretty powerful tool. And when it comes to visualization complexity and options of how you can build the dashboards, I like Tableau the most. I think that one, based on my opinion, is the strongest in the pack. So with that, let's talk about the organizational change management, and Jim will lead us through that topic.
All right. Thank you, Mark. We've got a few minutes left before we get into Q&A. So with every change, you guys have all heard about OCM, organizational change management. And then looking at the upper left there, one of the things to consider when you're looking at a data analytics program is doing an impact study, looking at your stakeholders. What's the assessment? What's the impact to those folks? And how is this going to change their world? Going down lower left there, do we have a company change management program? Do we have an ability to make change, or are we very regimented kind of a group? And then back to executive leadership involvement. They have to be involved in this whole program top to bottom, because myself as a CFO, I have to be involved, because that's what I want for people. I want data out to folks to let them make some decisions. The upper right, super important item is communication strategy. Do we have a plan to launch training? With every change, you got to train folks. You got to identify, what are the differences and get them trained up on the tool. And so we can get to that self-serve environment that Martin's talked about. And on the lower right, the success criteria. How do we know we're successful? What are the metrics that measures that kind of stuff? And that's an important aspect to see if you're being successful. So that's a very brief overview of OCM. We wanted to touch on the highlights. Takeaways. The takeaways, number one, data analytics business case. We've talked about that several times about, data capture, how to integrate data, communicate data. Pillars for success, those are the drivers and anchors for the project. And then leadership championship. Do we have a clear plan, a roadmap, and are we continually communicating to our folks about this involvement? Because this is not just a one and done. This is a perpetual kind of a program that you can implement in your organization. We provided some checklists, planning and implementation, and then that data path. I know that may be out there, but we're going to try to get to prescriptive someday. We'll start with descriptive, and data-driven intelligence creates decision-making for everybody in the organization. Now, Sri, well, we thought you'd want to know, okay, what's my next steps? We've got to take about 50 minutes to talk about that. We wanted Sri to talk about what should I be thinking about? What are my next steps if I want to implement something like this?
Thank you, Jim. I'll try to rush through it as fast as I can. We're a little pressed for time here. So we thought everybody pretty much falls into one of these categories. Either you are starting, meaning you haven't done anything in data and analytics yet, or you're on the road, you're already there, or fully implemented, right? If you're starting, then please do, as we covered earlier, don't try to boil the ocean. Start with some quick hits, right? That's what, as we called earlier, start with a pilot. And your executives are going to be, from our experience, very happy with that too. Rather than granting millions and millions of dollars upfront, it always helps them make the decision easier. On the road, if you already implemented this, there's always room to expand. To begin with, you may have implemented with a dozen data sources, but might have left out those few others which were not, could not make it to phase one. Then you want to consider and expand on that. And finally, if you're fully implemented, if you think you're fully implemented, even then, we strongly recommend getting your data and analytics landscape audited or checked out periodically, every 6 months, biannually or whatever, just to make sure you're doing the right thing. And just somebody to tell you if there's a better way to do this or better tools out there since you last checked. So with that would be over to question and answer. Hey, there you go. That's my favorite plant-based Impossible Burger. So what are you doing there, Jim?
So Sri, you said that was a plant-based burger, or is that my hamburger that I'm like, or is my chicken sandwich?
I don't see chicken there, but
so no, we're just trying to inject some humor here to try to talk about, this has many different layers in the program, and yeah, we wanted to start talking about some of the questions. One of the questions from Kathy is, Sri, what database are we're using for this for your demo?
Oh, for the demo, we use Amazon RDS. It's a MySQL-based engine. And on the cloud platforms, they provide tons and tons of options for this. There are some which are better suited for data warehousing, is different than typical database, right? So you want to look for data warehousing. This is not typically that, but you want to look for data warehousing or business warehousing solutions. This one was MySQL-based RDS on AWS.
So Sri, are these difficult to manage? Can you when you put these things together? Because remember, you had an API connection, you had a CSV, you had a NoSQL connection, you had all kinds of connections, right? Are these very difficult to manage?
I wouldn't call them, difficult is not the word that I use, but you need to have the right expertise. To begin with, anyone can do this. I mean, if you just want to import some data, customer sales, into a chosen database or data warehouse, anyone can do that. But to manage them in the right way, right? There are all different kinds of schemas, data warehousing schemas, right? Which is the best in your case. So difficult is not the word that I would use, but it is expert friendly. So you would ultimately, sooner or later, you would need some expert to look at that and advise you or even implement for you the best possible choices along the way. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it did. Thank you very much. So Martin, you talked about automating and all the connections. So what can you give us a little more depth on some what do you mean by automation? Because I've got my spreadsheets, right? I've got my ERP system. I've got all these different things. What are we trying to do? What's the end game? Why are we trying to automate this? And what's that look like?
Yeah, no, I'm sure you have spreadsheets, you have CSV files. Think about all the manual steps that are required to get those ready for your reporting every month. And that's where automation can help. The model that Sri and I have presented there can be fully automated, meaning there's a extract, there's a data ETL extract, transform, and load of the data from your ERP system rather than you downloading Excel spreadsheets, rather than you running those transactions in your ERP system, that can be automated into the business warehouse that Sri showed us. And then there is a refresh of the data sources scheduled from the visualization packages. So we have Tableau or Power BI or Click that actually pulls that data from business warehouse, again, automatically. So what that automation really means is that you come to work in the morning and you open up your self-service portal and your dashboards are refreshed. Your reports are done, right? There's no manual intervention anymore.
Perfect. Perfect. Sri, if we wanted to get started, what would you recommend to folks to get started, to start to look at a data analytics program and all the different data sources? What do people need to do? What do they need to consider when they're looking at this? Because if you've never started this, how do I get started? What do you think we need to do there?
Right. It all starts, thanks, Jim, and thanks whoever asked the question. It all starts with identifying the right people, right? It starts, in my mind, with a business analyst. And all of you smart CPAs make excellent business analysts. I work with some of them at my client places. And of course, we have Jim right here, the smartest guy. So it's basically, you start with that, with a business analyst. There is an analysis step that needs to precede any work, even before you write the first line of code, or first drag and drop for your data integration. There's an analysis step. That's where you start. After, of course, getting the leadership buy-in. And then from that point, of course, you look at all the different tools. So I would say the people, the analysis, and the tools. That's your first three things to look at. And that requires lots of analysis, and typically it's weeks and weeks worth of, sometimes months worth of analysis before you actually see your first prototype.
Perfect. Thank you, Sri. So Martin, when you're working with clients, we talked about our 6 pillars, right? We talked about those 6 pillars. And when you're developing a project plan for your clients and we're going through a data analytics approach, do you integrate to each one of those? And how detailed do you get into something like leadership commitment? And should I pick Click, BI, Tableau? How much detail do you go into that?
Yeah, no, great question, Jim. And before I answer that question, I just want to remind participants that we're still open for questions. So if you go out there, click a chat button, type in your questions, we'll try to answer it. But the answer to your question, Jim, is it will depend, right? Every company, what we cover today will give you a general guidelines for how to start a data analytics program. You might be stronger in some of those aspects, and those might not be new to you, but you might be weaker on others. And so try to assess where you need to put work, right? If you have that senior leadership, you might have members of your senior leadership team who are just bought into this. They don't need much buy-in. You don't need to spend too much time obtaining that leadership buy-in, right? If you need to convince them a little more, they're not quite there, but you see the vision, well, that's going to take a little bit of time and effort, right? And so that's true for all of those steps as you go through those 6 pillars that we walked there. And as you go through the individual steps of your data analytics program, that's going to be the case.
Thank you, Martin. So that's it for our Q&A today. We have at the back end of our presentation, we have all of our contact information. All of us would be glad to answer any questions. Feel free to email us, call us, anything you'd like. We're glad to help you start your journey. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ashley to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed that presentation. Just a little housekeeping. Please give us a few minutes or so to reconcile your CPE. If it looks a little wonky when you log out of this, we'll reconcile it on the back end, and you should see it updated by tomorrow. And then other than that, I hope everyone has a great day. This was recorded and we'll send it out to those who registered. So if you want to listen to it again and hear all that great information again, you should see that with tomorrow or the beginning of next week.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.